So the main topic today is, of course, as the title suggests, talking about SAP VC and how we see running Tacton CPQ together with SAP VC. VC comes in play in two different places in the process. The first one being as part of the master data process in Tacton. So when we do build product models, we're able to consume variants and characteristics from SAP VC exports into building our products. And we also see when we come to the order execution, we're able to start an order execution based on our KMATs with the characteristic values. Worth pointing out as well is if we have SAP without the VC component, it's in no way so that Tacton CPQ is a bad fit. In fact, I don't have the statistics, but I believe that the most common setup we have in our customers that are running an integrated environment with CPQ is to have SAP without VC as the ERP system. So it's a very common and supported case, but it's not the focus of what we just saw. Bringing forward a little bit on what we're presenting in the sense of why do you need both, right? Because we got SAP VC runs a configurator and Tacton CPQ runs a configurator. You might have seen this slide before in relation to how we see the Tacton CPQ configurator, that we typically say you layer a configuration where you have your technical rule as a base, and then you can add your marketing, low-cut, and customer needs into the same solution to make sure we have a solution that covers the need of a customer all the way down to the technical specification, everything being correct. And this is what you need for selling most of the products we deal with. But to look at the full end-to-end process, there is one more layer to this, which is after you've sold it, you of course have to manufacture and ship the product. So you have to have your order execution. And that, in the case of a configurable product, can come with a set of variable manufacturing rules. So that would be ordering of materials, the welding of parts together, the machining of things in CNC machines, and so on. And what we've seen and sort of enabled by this concept is to split this logic to sit where it fits best. So we're able to run the sales configuration inside Tacton CPQ and run all the different levels of rules to get a good sales product to sell. And then as a second stage, we can run the manufacturing rules out of SAP VC to make sure that the manufacturing BOM and routing gets created correctly. And looking at this in a sort of end-to-end process of an order, this is how this comes into place. We have a set of logic that relates to the sale that comes first, that we execute inside Tacton CPQ. What is good is for this part of the process, you don't necessarily need to know how you're going to put together the product and make it ready for shipping. What you need to know is what's the technical capabilities of a product to fulfill the needs of a customer. And then once you've sold it, you need to be able to, of course, get a good manufacturing bill of material together so you can assemble and get the product over to the customer. An example what this could look like, to clarify where this border between SAP VC and Tacton CPQ lies, we can look at the little example here where we have, in this case, it's for the configuration of a bus. We have a couple of high-level questions about how does the place you're driving, what does it look like? How many passengers do you have? How far do you drive, and so on? That are guided selling, that breaks down to a number of product features or specifications, where we know this is the capacity we have to have of our product. That in turns break down to the number of modules that corresponds to our sales bill of material. So this would be KMATs or materials, and the sales bill of material. Then when we get into SAP, we would then do a further breakdown of figuring out some parts are going to be purchased, some parts are going to be manufactured, and in that case they might be broken down into further sub-parts and sub-assemblies for the manufacturing process.
So what is the problem with the SAP integration with Tacton CPQ? So in Tacton, we have an information model which looks like this, perhaps familiar with you. So you have a product with product model. We have in product modeling, we have assemblies with positions, modules and features. In TC Studio, assemblies are closely two parts, and we have components and classes instead of module and features, but they're basically the same. But if we look into SAP, that model, information model, is very different. In SAP, they talk about KMATs, materials, they have materials, classes, characteristic values, and they have something called dependencies, which are their way of writing rules. So to say, we have constraints, they have what's called dependencies that can be preconditions, selection conditions, constraints, and procedures. So we have these two very different information models, and the issue is, okay, how can we combine this into the same structure so they can talk to each other? And this is what we have investigated. So the solution, which is a high-level concept of how this could be done. So when you have products, it's all starts in engineering most often, so that you create a structure in engineering. Typically, those can be assemblies and parts. When the product is engineered and ready, and this structure is then moved into the supply so that the product can be produced. But in the SAP case, this structure is transformed into this new other structure consisting of KMATs, materials, and routings, which you add to, and the KMATs will have characteristic and characteristic values in all its levels. And all this is called the super bill of material. So in SAP, they call it the boom explosion. So you have the complete structure, and then based on some configuration rules, you will add or remove KMATs. In SAP, they also differentiate between what they call high-level configuration and low-level configuration, and high-level dependencies and low-level dependencies. And the high-level dependencies are those that are used, or the high-level configuration is what's used when you actually run this configuration in sales case. So when you actually create the order, you use the high-level configuration. And then that high-level configuration is used to drive the low-level configuration. So you actually do the boom explosion at that time. So when we looked into how our customers actually did this, we saw that they're not exporting everything from SAP. They only use the high-level configuration and use that in Tacton. So we export the high-level KMAT with its characteristic and characteristic values, and that could be mapped in product modeling into an assembly with a position for each characteristic. So you have an assembly with a module, where the module is the same as the characteristic, and the module variance will be characteristic values. And then, when that could be done automatically through the APIs, and then you will need to add the Tacton constraints and rules. And that's also what we've seen, that customers actually don't want to copy the rules from SAP, because using our constraint language is much more powerful than using the high-level dependencies in SAP. So instead of writing thousands of high-level dependencies, you can just use a few constraints in Tacton, which is much more efficient to administrate, and with the lower cost and so on. So you can actually remove all the high-level dependencies in SAP. They're of no use there. Because what you also want to do in Tacton is to add this sales logic and these guided selling rules, which you don't have in SAP because it's not possible to write them there. So you need to add rules anyway in Tacton to have these guided selling rules, and you use our power to make an easy experience for the end user. What we can automate, however, is in SAP it's called variant tables, and those can be imported directly into Tacton CPQ and product modeling through the combination tables with the new API we have. So that can be automated. The next step, when this is run in the front end, when the sales rep is using it, we create a bill of material from the product architecture in the product model. And then what we also seen is that the assembly typically have a price and will be part of the BOOM, and the module variants selected. And some of the module variants will have a price and some won't. And those are then connected to something called in SAP called variant conditions. So typically there are a one-to-one relation to a variant condition and the characteristic value. Typically, if you have a car, for instance, the car will be KMAT with the price. And then if you add some extra features, like a color is not an extra feature, but if you have a color, for instance, the standard color will be included, but if you add, or the user wants a more advanced color like metallic, it will have an extra price, for instance. And then in the order, when this becomes an order, we will map this back again into the characteristic values. So the assembly will map to the KMAT, and the module variants will be mapped into characteristic value. And then we run, or SAP will run the low-level configuration to create the product-specific manufacturing bill of material in SAP. So that there we actually use the SAP VC in that case to drive the low-level configuration. An example of how this could look like. So for instance, here we have a bill of material created in Tacton. So we have a machine X with a part number, which is the KMAT number, 123. It can have a price. We have the positions 1.1 to 1.3, which are characteristics. So we have a slow engine, which is the characteristic value. It's connected to a variant, the slow engine 1 variant. And that combination, so slow engine 1 in combination with KMAT 123 will give the price 10. And this for the steel, it's not connected to variant, so it's included in the price. And we have front loader with the front loader 1 variant condition, and in combination with KMAT 123, it will have a price 100 euros, and the total price then will be 1,110. And then when we do the ordering, the first line, the machine X will create the position in the sales order, SAP sales order, where it will have the total price, net price. But the other rows, the characteristics, will go into another table called characteristic value assignment. So there you will, which is then connected to the order row. So the characteristics will then be used. So when all this is done, the SAP VC will run in the background and create the boom explosion to create the full manufacturing bill of material. So that was about the concept. If we look into the process, typical administration process, so it starts in SAP. An engineer will create a low-level configuration with the low-level dependencies. The modeler will create a high-level configuration, but in this case, you won't need to add the high-level dependencies because those will be added in Tacton. When the high-level configuration that came out with the characteristic values are done, it will be exported using our standard APIs into Tacton. And then the modeler continues his or her work by adding the constraints, the sales logic, and the user interface. The product owner will then validate that the constraints are correct, and that needs then to be validated against SAP because you want to see that the end result will be correct. Some price admin will add the pricing data. The pricing data can also be exported directly from SAP through the PROO data table and the VA for variant conditions. So that can be automated. The proposal admin will prepare the quote documents, and when all this is set up, the release admin will deploy this to production so that the sales rep can configure and create proposals that are sent to the end customer. And when the end customer accepts the proposal, the sales rep creates a sales order that will go into SAP, and the process will continue there to do the order preparation and the boom explosion and so on.
So with this concept and these techniques, what do we see as an expected outcome on the business side? What would be the business value and the gains you're looking to get by running Tacton together with SAP VC? Well, the first one is, as we've seen in Tacton CPQ, you get a lot better user experience of configuring your products than in SAP VC. As Robert showed, we have much better conflict resolution and user experience in configuring the product. We also have a possibility to enable guided selling with the Tacton rules. We can connect conflict visualization and CAD automation, and we have a real-time pricing engine running together with the configuration. We also have the possibility for a smoother maintenance. Like Robert showed, we have the Tacton constraints language allows for much more compact and efficient representation and separating the data from the logic. So by moving into Tacton CPQ, the maintenance can be significantly reduced from what we've seen. And of course, we're able to get this product out to all channels. So if you're running customer self-service, lead gen, direct sales with resellers, it can all be part of the same sales process and configuration. And of course, you get still the benefit of having a manufacturing bill of material breakdown with the rules you already put into SAP, and you keep that good part of the puzzle. So we've been out a couple of times and actually presented this concept to customers and discussed it, and a few questions have come up in that. I think I would bring them up and sort of the answer to the question marks that have come up. And first one we met a couple of times is questions about this split of maintenance between Tacton VC, between VC and Tacton CPQ. Sort of some need to maintain part of the logic in both systems when it comes to manufacturability, meaning if the manufacturing process limits the possibility to sell things, there will be a small overlap in logic. And there is, of course, a point to that. There will be two systems to maintain it, one for the manufacturing and one for the sales logic. But on the other hand, it's a little bit a necessity because VC alone can't fulfill the requirements. So introducing some other system to handle the sales configuration is really necessary to get a good end-to-end process. And also the split, as shown, is fairly well defined, meaning everything required for the sales lives in Tacton CPQ and only the manufacturing breakdown rules live in SAP VC. Another thing that has been brought up is, of course, the fact that maybe we've already built high-level dependencies, so sales and engineering logic inside SAP VC. And that is true, and that is time spent. However, what we've seen is because of the efficiency of the constraint-based definition in Tacton CPQ, actually moving it over and rebuilding it in Tacton CPQ in the long run is going to give less maintenance effort altogether. And of course, there is an initial effort to transfer it. So for the combination table, those can be transferred using the APIs. And for constraints, they would have to be manually rebuilt. Another point is a question about having the full manufacturing bill of material in Tacton. And typically, this is related to cost and cost plus pricing, where you need every single nut and bolt to get a true price and potentially also the manufacturing process. This cannot be brought up to be priced on a module and characteristics basis, then something that's frequently done is then to run an order simulation using the same VC order execution SAP to get the full actual cost from the ERP system. But another good sort of guideline here is to try to transfer KMATs on the right level, which is typically the order line level where prices will be aggregated to, rather than, so if you have a product built of multiple submodules, typically submodules can be the actual order lines that carry the price. And another point that comes up is a question about having high-level logic inside SAP in order to be able to enter orders directly in SAP. And what we've seen there with the customers that have implemented this sort of models is actually what you do is you change your process a little bit, and for every configured order, that is entered through CPQ. So you always run the sales logic in CPQ before you end up in SAP to run the manufacturing logic. Sort of to summarize all this, I've got a few points, which is the first one is what we presented today. It is a concept on how to do this. We only use standard functionalities in the two different systems. So standard KB exports and standard APIs on the CPQ side, which also means there's no product or product cost for what we've seen today specifically. This concept is built for customers that already have products in VC. There is also a case for introducing Tacton CPQ and VC or AVC at the same time. It would look a little bit different than this. So if you're in a case like that, I would recommend reaching out to us, and we can update you on some of the differences. Also worth mentioning is, as we said, we don't export a complete VC model, only the high-level configuration KMATs and not the high-level rules. And the manufacturing configuration still sits in SAP. And the SAP rules are not converted, mostly because the efficiency of the way you can write constraints in Tacton will make the maintenance much smaller if you rebuild it. We've seen cases where thousands of SAP VC rules have turned out to only be a handful of rules in Tacton CPQ.